police were given a report by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Lab, whoever looked at the DNA.
There was something about her. Bright, bubbly, free-spirited, bold. You know the type. Up before sunrise for yoga, sipping kombucha, probably never laid eyes on a mink coat, and wouldn't wear one if she had. Boulder itself was beautiful, sure, but it was a far cry from the world we knew. We were suit and tie, briefcase, and coffee people.
Is for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the killer of our daughter.
Boulder was barefoot walks and crystal healing. And then there was John Ramsey. He had that look, calm, unreadable, the kind of face that made people wonder, what's going on in his head? He was the first to find JonBenet. He picked her up, held her, and in that moment, the crime scene was destroyed. Any chance of preserving evidence vanished. Strangely, though, the police never pressed him the way they grilled Patsy or even Burke. Odd, considering he was the head of the household, the one in charge. Yet somehow, he was seen as just a sad, grieving father in the background. But was that all he really was? Or did John know more than he ever let on? So, who exactly is John Ramsey? Let's rewind. JonBenet Ramsey was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. Not just a wealthy man with a mysterious presence, he was sharp too. He earned an electrical engineering degree from Michigan State in 1966, then returned for his MBA in 1971. He began his career in the Navy, serving with the Civil Engineer Corps, 3 years stationed in the Philippines, then 8 more in the reserves out of Atlanta. On top of that, he was a licensed pilot, owning not 1, but 2 private planes. That kind of detail says a lot. Either he was truly passionate about flying, or he just hated standing in TSA line. The military tradition ran in the family. His father, James J. Ramsey, was a decorated World War II pilot. His mother, Mary Jane, raised him in Nebraska, where his early years shaped the foundation for what looked like an ideal life. Successful career, financial security, a growing family, but appearances, as always, can be deceiving. John's personal life had its twists. He first married in 1966 to Lucinda Posh. They had 3 children together, Elizabeth, Melinda, and John Andrew, before divorcing in 1978. Nothing dramatic, at least publicly, just a quiet split after more than a decade together. 2 years later, in 1980, he married Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen with a radiant smile and an even bigger personality. Together, they had 2 children, Burke, and their youngest, JonBenet Patricia Ramsey, born August 6, 1990. The little girl with golden curls who would one day be at the heart of one of America's most infamous mysteries. As a father, John wasn't the distant, too busy for family type. He showed up, supported his kids' activities, paid the bills, lived the part of a present parent. By 1996, the Ramseys had settled into their Boulder mansion on 15th Street. Professionally, John was thriving. In 1989, he founded Advanced Product Group, which later merged with other companies to form Access Graphics. Under his leadership as CEO, the company didn't just grow, it skyrocketed. By 1996, it had pulled in over $1 billion in revenue. That same year, John was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. His personal fortune? By May 1996, around $6.4 million. Just weeks before Christmas, he even pocketed a $118,000 bonus, money most people couldn't dream of seeing in a decade. But John wasn't all business. Around the holidays, the Ramseys were a familiar sight at community gatherings and church events, particularly at St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder. There's no official record of every event they attended in those final December days, but by all accounts, they were the picture-perfect family, smiling, participating, projecting warmth and happiness. Of course, behind the polished surface, things weren't always as perfect as they looked. Money, titles, and a picture-perfect home never tell the whole story. John wasn't only the man running a multi-million-dollar company, he was also an active father, especially when it came to JonBenet's pageants. Most of the glitter, costumes, and scheduling fell to Patsy. the former beauty queen who knew that world inside and out. But John was present too, whether cheering from the sidelines, sitting through rehearsals, or smiling proudly from the front row. He showed up. Just before Christmas, JonBenet had even performed at a shopping mall in Boulder, and it's very likely John was there, camcorder in hand, doing what dads do best. Outside of family life, John and Patsy were firmly part of Boulder's upper-crust social circle, mingling with families like the Whites and the Stein. On December 23, 1996, just 2 days before everything would change, the Ramseys went to a Christmas party hosted by Fleet and Priscilla White. The guest list was very Boulder, affluent, well-connected, polished. But that wasn't their only event of the night. Earlier, from about 5 o'clock to 8 p.m., the Ramseys had opened their own home to 30-40 guests. Friends, neighbors, children in holiday sweaters. Everyone gathered under their roof. The evening felt festive. A Santa impersonator, Bill McReynolds, stopped by to delight the kids. Children decorated gingerbread houses while the adults mingled. At one point, Patsy gifted JonBenet a gold bracelet engraved with her name and the date, December 25, 1996. A sweet keepsake, now haunting in hindsight. Amid all the festivities, John was also planning ahead. The Ramseys owned a vacation home in Charlevoix, Michigan, and they intended to fly out right after Christmas to spend time with John's older children, Melinda and John Andrew, from his first marriage. As a licensed pilot, John planned to fly the family himself, a mix of luxury and practicality that fit the Ramsey lifestyle. So in those days before Christmas, life was a whirlwind of work, social events, and family traditions. On the surface, everything seemed full and happy, but that illusion was about to break. Christmas Day, 1996 appeared perfectly normal. 6-year-old JonBenet, dressed in a black and white holiday outfit, likely showed off her brand new bracelet. Friends dropped by, R.A. Brown, Priscilla White's parents, and a close family friend, Cliff Gaston. John, ever the host, mingled and entertained as usual. Nothing seemed out of place. But that evening, something strange happened. At 6:48 p.m., a 911 call was placed from the Ramsey home. The line went dead before anyone spoke. When dispatchers called back, no one answered. An officer was sent to check, but family friend Susan Stein reassured him it was probably a mistake. Maybe someone had misdialed while trying to order medication for an elderly relative. With nothing that looked suspicious, the officer left. No report was filed. After that, Christmas continued as normal. JonBenet unwrapped her new bicycle, the family exchanged gifts, shared dinner, and settled into what seemed like just another holiday evening. That night, after all the excitement of Christmas, John said he carried JonBenet to bed. Some have speculated she may have eaten pineapple later that evening, but nothing ever confirmed who gave it to her, or if it happened at all. Then came the morning of December the 26th, the day everything changed. Around 5:30 a.m., Patsy woke up to make coffee. The Ramseys were scheduled to fly to Charlevoix, Michigan later that day, with John piloting his own private plane. But when Patsy went to check on JonBenet, her bed was empty. Panic set in. Moments later, she discovered a handwritten ransom note on a back staircase. It was long, 3 pages, and demanded a strangely specific sum of money, $118,000, the exact figure John had received just weeks earlier as his Christmas bonus. The note claimed JonBenet had been kidnapped. Patsy rushed to John. They frantically searched the house, even peeking in on Burke, who was still asleep. At 5:52 a.m., Patsy dialed 911. That call has been scrutinized ever since. Instead of immediately saying her daughter was gone, Patsy opened by giving their address. Some chalk it up to efficiency, but others saw it as odd, like she was following a script. When she did describe the situation, she said, "We have a kidnapping, not my daughter's been taken." Subtle wording, but enough to make people question whether she was distancing herself from the reality. She spoke of the ransom note repeatedly before focusing on her missing child. She also kept saying, "our daughter" instead of "my daughter," which critics argued made her sound detached. Another detail, she said "please" over and over, polite, but to some it sounded forced, as though she was trying to sound more distraught than she felt. Perhaps most unsettling, she never asked the dispatcher what to do or how to get JonBenet back, and she didn't mention that the note explicitly warned against calling police, a detail you'd expect to terrify any parent. When Patsy hung up, the line stayed open for a few seconds. In the background, faint voices can be heard. One sounds like John saying, "We're not speaking to you." Another, likely Patsy, repeating, "What did you do? What did you do?" Some believe they were speaking to Burke, though the family claimed he was asleep through it all. So, was it a genuine cry for help or something else entirely? That question still lingers. When police arrived, John seemed cooperative. He handed over the ransom note, answered questions, and even invited friends Fleet and Priscilla White to the house for support. But this only complicated things. Their presence, along with others, meant the house was flooded with people before it was ever secured as a crime scene. Some even cleaned in the kitchen or moved objects around. Investigators were baffled. Why invite guests over when the note had specifically warned against contacting anyone? Stress might explain it. But the morning only grew stranger. Although officers searched the house, the basement wasn't thoroughly checked. Around 1 p.m., the lead detective asked John and Fleet White to do another walkthrough. Almost immediately, John headed for a small storage room in the basement, the kind of place where Christmas decorations were kept. That's where he found JonBenet. She was on the floor, covered with a white blanket, duct tape over her mouth, and a garrote around her neck. John scooped her up, sobbing, and carried her upstairs. He laid her body near the Christmas tree. That moment became one of the case's biggest controversies. By moving her, he destroyed key evidence: fingerprints, positioning, possible DNA. To investigators, it felt like an almost unthinkable mistake. The lead detective later described a chilling silence between herself and John in that moment. A look, she said, that gave her goosebumps. Since that morning, the case has been wrapped in mystery and suspicion. Every detail, the way the 911 call was handled, the way the house was searched, the way people acted, has fueled nearly 3 decades of speculation, but never closure. The ransom note itself remains one of the strangest elements. Most ransom notes are brief and direct. This one was unusually long, almost theatrical. Behavioral analysts noted it carried a strangely maternal tone, as if the writer knew the family personally. Suspicion quickly turned toward Patsy. Handwriting experts could never prove she wrote it, but they couldn't rule her out either. John and Burke, however, were cleared. The fact that the note was written inside the Ramsey home raised even more questions. No kidnapper ever called back. No demands were followed up on. To many investigators, it looked staged, an elaborate cover story for something much darker. Still, others argued, what if an intruder really had slipped in, waited for the perfect moment, and calmly took their time writing it? And then, of course, there was JonBenet herself, just 6 years old. Later that same day, her body was discovered in the basement. The autopsy revealed she had been strangled with a homemade garrote, fashioned from one of Patsy's broken paintbrushes. Her skull was fractured. There were signs of sexual trauma, though no semen was found. The little girl's body hadn't been dumped carelessly. It was arranged. She was partially covered with a white blanket. To some, that suggested guilt. To others, familiarity. Experts said the partial covering was unusual for a parent. It's something more often seen when a killer feels both shame and detachment. Then there was the pineapple. JonBenet had partially digested pineapple in her stomach, eaten sometime between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., yet both John and Patsy insisted she hadn't eaten anything that night. A bowl of pineapple sat on the kitchen table, and Burke's fingerprints were on it. No one could determine when those prints were left, but the detail added another disturbing layer. Was JonBenet awake that night, sharing a late snack with her brother? Did something happen then? Even John's behavior raised eyebrows. When he found her body, he carried her upstairs, unintentionally disturbing the crime scene. Some investigators believed it was deliberate. Others argued, how else would a father react upon finding his daughter lifeless in a basement? What makes the case so enduringly perplexing is the duality. On one hand, so much evidence points to someone inside the house. On the other, there are undeniable clues suggesting an outsider. Take the DNA. Unidentified male DNA was found in several places. On JonBenet's underwear, on her leggings, even beneath her fingernails. It matched neither John nor Burke nor Patsy. It also matched no one in the FBI's database. That revelation was explosive. In 2008, the district attorney went so far as to publicly clear the family because of it. Skeptics argued the DNA might have been contamination from the clothing manufacturer. Others dismissed that, pointing out the complexity of the samples. Some even suggested there may have been more than one contributor. In 2024, Jon Ramsey pushed for advanced genealogical testing, hoping science might finally give him the answers that had eluded investigators for so long. Still, every answer only led to more questions. And then there's the moment that still haunts people. Jon Ramsey descending into the basement and finding his daughter's body. Nearly 30 years later, the circumstances remain unsettling. Because John didn't just wander aimlessly through the house, he went straight to the basement. Not only that, he walked directly to a little windowless room tucked away in the far corner, a space that was rarely used. And there, in that quiet, hidden room, he found JonBenet. To some, the discovery felt like a father's instinct. To others, it felt a little too convenient. Some experts, especially those in the CBS documentary, wondered if John already knew where to find her. They questioned whether the basement search was genuine or just for show. But pause for a moment. When John came upstairs, cradling his daughter's body, sobbing, panicked, that wasn't the image of a man performing for an audience. It looked like raw, devastating grief. Whatever you believe about this case, in that instant, he looked like a broken father. And yet, the questions don't stop. Was it pure instinct that led him there, or something else? The ransom note remains one of the strangest pieces of the puzzle. 3 pages long, written inside the house. Who sits down during a kidnapping to write a novel? When police first arrived, they treated it exactly as the note instructed, as a kidnapping. That meant the Ramsey home wasn't locked down as a crime scene. Friends and neighbors came and went. Evidence was touched, moved, maybe even lost. Then John carried JonBenet upstairs, unknowingly disturbing her body further. Was that a calculated decision, or just the reflex of a father who couldn't bear to leave his child in the dark? Other details only deepened the mystery. A flashlight on the counter, possibly the weapon used to fracture her skull, had no fingerprints, no blood, no DNA. A length of rope appeared in a guest room. No one in the family recognized it. A boot print in the basement didn't match anyone living in the house. A pubic hair was found on the blanket, also not from anyone in the home. And then there was the DNA, the one piece of evidence that still offers a thread of hope. Male DNA was found under JonBenet's fingernails, on her underwear, and on her leggings. It didn't match John, Burke, or Patsy. It didn't match anyone in the FBI's database. In 2008, that DNA evidence was enough for the district attorney to publicly clear the entire Ramsey family, declaring, "This came from someone else. We believe you." But not everyone accepted that. Some experts suggested it could have come from the clothing manufacturer. Others insisted it belonged to the killer. In 2024, Jon Ramsey pushed for advanced genealogical testing, desperate for science, to finally deliver what detectives could not: justice for JonBenet. Yet, every time one answer surfaces, 5 new questions follow. The broken basement window, was it an intruder's entry point, or just a convenient red herring? The strange marks on JonBenet's body, were they stun gun wounds or something else entirely? And the 911 call. Patsy sounded frantic, terrified, but audio experts later claimed faint voices could be heard after the call ended, one possibly belonging to Burke, despite the family insisting he was asleep. Was that a technical glitch or evidence someone was lying? At the center of it all is John Ramsey. His grief, his actions, his choices. He found the body. The ransom note mentioned his bonus. He carried her upstairs, and yet none of the physical evidence has ever tied back to him. That's what makes this case so haunting. Every clue seems to point in two directions at once. Every person appears both innocent and suspicious. And decades later, JonBenet's story still echoes, through her family, through investigators, and through all of us still searching for answers. Because for everything we think we know, the truth remains just out of reach.